So hopefully you can all see my screen that I've got shared at the moment. I'm just going to hand over to my colleague Nikita to run through what we're going to be looking at.
So yeah, thank you, Holly. Here's a look at what we'll be covering in today's session. Firstly, a quick introduction to version 6 and how it came about, and the main new features and developments. We'll then be giving you a demo of the dashboard in action with a short video on the SystmOne integration. Finally, we'll have some time for any questions that you may have at the end. We know many of you will be keen to know when these upgrades are available. The deployment plan at the moment is to have a practice from each area as a pilot, and then once that practice is happy with the new release, we will start to roll it out across your area. The exact detail of this is yet to be defined, as there is still a lot to do, such as forms changing and many more things. So this may need to happen in stages, which is why we can't give you a date just yet. So, an introduction to version 6. So the V6 dashboard, it came about from several feedback sessions with groups of practices, including those in Surrey Heartlands towards the end of 2020. This feedback ranged from clinical system integration to smaller functionality issues like navigating lists of requests and filters and reducing the number of clicks for practices dealing with large numbers of requests on a daily basis. We've maintained the existing functionality that you are familiar with, so what we're going to be looking at today covers the additional features and the updated layout. I'm now going to pass on to Holly to open the demo dashboard so you can follow along as we explain.
Thanks, Nikita. So I'm just going to open our V6 dashboard demo here, so hopefully you can all see that. So any of you who are already familiar with version 5 or any previous versions of the dashboard, this will obviously look quite a lot different. However, the general concept of the dashboard is pretty much the same. So what we've basically done is we've removed the main lists at the top of the screen. So you no longer have those kind of numbered lists to keep track of things. However, you do have the work list, which is now moved onto the left-hand side here. So it's kind of more of a navigational change, really. And the reason we've done that is so that we can hide all of the additional menu options in this drop down here. So when you're looking at the dashboard, the first thing you see when you log in is just related to the requests. And you don't have the additional options unless you specifically look for them here. And on this work list, we've made some changes as well. So you still have your personal work list, which shows you the requests that are visible to everybody and that have been specifically assigned to your user. And then you've got the new requests, parked, waiting, and all open. And we've split the new requests into new requests and new reply. So one of the lists is there so that you can see brand new queries that have just been submitted by patients. And new reply is for anything that has been updated by a patient. So it's kind of an ongoing discussion. So you can differentiate between ongoing things and things that are brand new. We've also now added a tab for breached alerts. So you can go through the dashboard and prioritize based on things that have breached a KPI. And you can still see things that you've been assigned in a separate list, as well as things that you've assigned to other people. And you've still got the assigned summary and the recently closed list. So those are a few things that we've changed in the navigational work list. In terms of the requests themselves, we have the pinning action. So what this means is that I've pinned 2 items here. So if I select these little icons in grey on a query, I can pin it. What that means is it stays at the top of my dashboard. So no matter where I navigate, it will stay visible. And anything that I've pinned will have my initials on it as an icon. So everyone else can see that I'm currently pinning that request. And it's just a courtesy to let other people know that even though you're not currently viewing that query, you are planning on dealing with it, or you're putting it to one side. So you might be working through a list of queries and you're pinning the ones that you are intending to deal with until you get in to actually do them. And one thing with the pinning icon is, or the pinning status even, when something gets pinned, it stays pinned for 30 minutes. And there's a time limit on it so that if you pin something, it stops other people from not dealing with it. Because if you assume that somebody else has pinned it and then you ignore it, if that person doesn't do it for any reason, or if they don't have time to get around to it at the end of the day, it unpins. So it goes back into everybody's list and then it can be dealt with by somebody else. But pinning doesn't lock the request to anybody. It's still available to be accessed. It just means that it's indicating somebody else pinned it. So when you're on the dashboard, the default view is every query is listed, basically. So you could have to click into the patient details to view the request, which is what you would normally do on previous versions as well. What we've added on version 6 is the ability to swap to what we call card view. So this means that you still see each request in the list and the pinned items are still there at the top as well, but you can make quick changes to the queries as well as preview them. So in card view, each request will have a little icon with an eye in it. And if you click that, it will show you a preview of the content of the request, and you haven't left the list, so it's just giving you a preview. Whilst you're in there, you can also assign stuff. So this is really helpful for staff members who normally triage requests. So they log in, they work through the list of all the new stuff, all the park stuff, for example, and then they just want to assign it, but they don't want to have to keep clicking into each request and assigning it and coming back out, and then going into the next one and doing it again multiple times. So this just means that you can quickly assign stuff without having to leave the list of requests. So you can quickly and easily just go through and preview each thing, see what it's about, and then assign it to the right person or the group. And whilst you're in card view, if you've pinned a request, you can also make quick changes to the status of the query. So you can see here, the pinned requests have got these drop-down arrows, whereas these ones don't. So I can drop down and change the status from new to parked or waiting, or I can close the request. I can change it from normal to urgent. I can also assign it from here as well once it's been pinned. So again, it means that you don't have to go into each specific request to make changes to it if you're only going to be changing the status or assigning it. So let's go back to list view, sorry. So that's the main view of the dashboard. Now we're just going to go into a request and have a look at some of the things that have changed in there. So this is an example of a request, and you can see it still pretty much looks the same as previous versions. Some of the differences are you can now hide bits of activity on the request just to make it more readable if you've got quite a lot of activity on the page, and you can shrink things down. You've still got the reply option up here and adding a note and doing videos. You've got the ability to do a PDF of the form and print it as well. And if you want to exit the request back to the list, you can use this button here. So one of the things we've now added in the reply feature is global quick responses. So rather than just having quick responses for each individual request, you can have them for all the requests combined. So in this example, if I click on quick responses, the quick responses for each specific query will still be visible at the top of this list, but then you'll see global here, and everything beneath that will be the global quick responses. So these will be visible on all requests, even if there aren't any individual ones on it as well. I will show you how to find and edit the quick responses globally as well, but we'll come to that in a little bit. So I just want to show you where that was on the quick responses. Everything else within the reply is still the same. So you can still respond to patients, allow them to respond. You can attach documents. You can allow the patient to send documents back to you. So all of the usual things on that still apply. So what else have we got on here? So we've got the ability to forward. We are going to go into more detail about this, and we have a short video that we're going to show you which will explain the integration with SystmOne. But briefly, this is the button that you'll be using. So if you want to forward a copy of the episode into SystmOne, use this button and it will forward all the activity into the patient record automatically, and it will go into the patient record without you having to search for it, basically. So it will be integrated into SystmOne, and then it will forward through by clicking this button. If you want to just pick and choose what parts of the episode get copied over instead of the whole thing, so for example, you might add a note to a query that's intended to be internal, but you want to forward it into the patient record, and you don't want the patient to be able to see that. So if I add a note to this, and we've also got a couple of other things like a reply on here, if I use this button here called copy episode, you can see it will allow me to switch off the bits that I don't want to be copied. So I can omit the notes, or I can omit whatever parts of the episode I need. And then when I copy that, that's what will go into SystmOne instead of the whole thing. So you can do this to just pick and choose what goes in, or you can use this button to just forward it directly into SystmOne, the whole thing. And you still have the ability to do the PDF option as well. One of the other things that we can now do with version 6 is connect into the patient demographic system, or the PDS, which is basically the database for all of the NHS patients. So whenever the request gets submitted onto the dashboard, it will look for the patient's details and match them to a patient in the clinical system. If they are matching and verified, then the details will come up on this right-hand side box, and it will basically, it will show the patient name, date of birth, everything like that they will have put in, but it will automatically find and display the patient's NHS number and their registered GP practice. So because right now we're looking at a fake patient, they don't exist, so they're not verified, which is why we've got these orange triangles next to the name. So if they were a verified patient, it would have green ticks and it would display their NHS number and their registered GP practice. So you won't have to go looking to find out if that patient is one of yours or not. It will tell you straight away, they are, if it was this practice, it would say Little Rivers Medical Practice. If it was a different one, you'd know that straight away. So you don't have to find out. And if for any reason the patient isn't verified, even though they are an actual patient of yours or somebody else's, if you have their NHS number, you can manually edit that. So if you know the NHS number, you can pop it in here and then it should manually verify that patient. So that's the main changes to the actual requests themselves. So let's exit this and go back out to the list of requests. There's a couple of other small things. So we've got filters on the dashboard. So this can help when you're working through a list of requests and you just want to specifically work on things like specific types of queries. So you might just be looking at sick notes or something, or test results, for example. You can filter by who something's been assigned to or by, what alerts have been breached on a query, or the status of the query. And you can apply multiple different filters at the same time. So for example, I might want to be looking at sick notes that have been assigned to a specific person. And anytime I apply one or more filters, they'll be visible at the top of the page here. So every time filters have been applied, even if I go into a query and then leave that query, the filters will still be there. So it remembers what filters you've just recently applied, and it will stay there so you don't have to keep resetting them. And then if you do want to clear them, you can either individually remove them or use this clear filters to get rid of them all and start fresh. So those are the main changes to the requests part of the dashboard on version 6. There are a couple of other things which I just want to show you as well. If we go to this menu, so again, the same with version 5 and previous versions, what you see in this menu will be different depending on if you're an admin or a user. So the admins will have full view of all of these options that we can see here, whereas the users will have slightly less. And the majority of them are exactly the same as on version 5. The only slight differences are if we go into form options, we can now see global quick responses here. So this is where you set those up. So it's exactly the same process as a normal quick response. This is just where you go in, add a new one, and you can have 10 for the whole dashboard. So you can have 10 to share amongst all the requests, and you set them up in the normal way. So that's under form options. And the other thing that we can now see is this button here called form routing. So you may not use this unless you're a practice that has a lot of different groups on the dashboard, and you might find it helpful to set up access rights for groups of users rather than each individual at a time. So rather than having to go into each user and setting up the access rights and say, right, I want Joe Blogs to see these forms, but not these forms, and you want them to be all matching for different groups. If you go into form routing and then select local routing, you won't see these other options on your site at the moment. So we're going to ignore these, but we're just looking at this one here, local routing. This basically shows a list of all the request types and then all the groups that are on your dashboard. And whichever one has a green tick against it means that that group can see that request. So all the members of that group, you can see here, it will show you the members, and then you'll know that each of those users has access to see that form. And if you click in one of these boxes, it will automatically give them access. So you can go in and pick and choose really quickly and easily which groups have access to which queries. So those are all of the changes on the demo that we have to show you. What we're now going to do is just look at a brief video to go through in more detail the SystmOne integration. So let me just swap over to that now. And hopefully the sound will work.
integration, we'll log into the Valida application to enable the clinical system integration to work between FootFall and SystmOne. Then we'll export a patient episode from the FootFall Dashboard into SystmOne. The first thing you need to do for the integration to work is to open and log into the Valida client, which will be installed onto your desktop as a shortcut, which will look like this. When it launches, you'll be asked to enter a username and password, which will be provided when your practice is ready to go live with the integration. Once you're logged into Valida, you will see a window with a menu that looks like this. You don't need to do anything else with this for now. Make sure SystmOne is open, along with your dashboard, which you can access in the usual way. So let's have a look at how you can export a patient episode from the dashboard into the clinical system. Here we have a patient who has submitted a UTI form. In order for the dashboard to be able to connect with SystmOne and for the clinical system integration to work, it's important that the patient has been verified against PDS and that their NHS number is present. In this case, we can see the patient has been verified, but if this is not the case, this can be manually added by selecting the pencil icon and either typing in or pasting the patient's NHS number. To export this episode into the clinical system, I select SystmOne at the top. Here we're given a breakdown of information that will be exported into SystmOne. This will include any clinical coding relating to the form the patient has submitted and the patient selections and text responses. If the patient has included any images with their form, or if there are any internal notes attached to the request, these would show here too. You can select what information you want to be exported into the clinical system by using the toggle buttons. You can also edit the text fields, add or remove text that may not be important to the episode. In this case, I might remove any options that the patient has not selected on the form. This helps to ensure the clinical system is not overloaded with information. Once you're ready to export, select Send to SystmOne, and you'll see a notification appear at the top. Now, if we open SystmOne and go into the patient record, you'll see the episode has been successfully exported to the patient's record. That concludes this short demonstration of the clinical system integration with SystmOne. Thank you for watching.
Okay, so far what we've covered is available on the current rollout of version 6. The SystmOne integration via the Valida app is something that we will be able to give you a date on very shortly. At the moment, we are using a third party called Valida for the integration with SystmOne. This is an interim solution to connect with SystmOne whilst we developed a direct integration through IM1. We've already achieved a direct integration for EMIS through IM1, and we are currently working on the one for SystmOne.
There was one thing I just wanted to add as well. On top of the integration using the Valida app, we are also looking at adding a toolbar, which I have a screenshot of. So just to give you a small preview of what that will look like, let me just open this window here. So you'll be able to have access to a little toolbar that will sit on your desktop, and you'll be able to use this can do quick shortcut actions. So that's something that will be coming in the future. So we just wanted to give you a little preview of that.
Great. Does anybody have any questions or anything they would like us to go through again?
Hiya, sorry, I missed the first 10 minutes because I was stuck in another meeting. If our reception team are filling in forms on a patient's behalf, then does that connect via the PDS at that point?
So once they press submit through the patient forms section, it will connect to the PDS and verify them as well, yeah.
Okay. And does the coding work on all the review forms as well? Is it pulling through the QoF codes?
So what we do have so with version 6, we do have a suite of clinically coded forms that also help towards your points for QoF. So these are preset forms with preset codes that you will have access to if you would like them. So you can either use our preset new forms, or you'll be able to code your own forms on the back end of the dashboard as well. So you can do both or one or the other depending on what you prefer.
Thank you. So we've just had a question come in from Suzanne. So you've asked, what about patients who submit new patient registration forms, and how does that export to SystmOne if the patient is not registered yet? That is a very good question. If they were previously registered with another surgery, then their details will still be checked against PDS, and it will show their previously registered surgery. So it will still verify them. So you would do that in the normal way, set them up within your own practice, register them, complete that process. And then whenever they submit any queries from that point, once they've been registered with the change on PDS, it will then show up with the new practice on that detail.
Okay, do we have any other questions about version 6 or the integration at all?
I've got one more question, which is a sort of obvious question, I guess. Is there an extra cost to version 6? And secondly, will you give us, you're talking about giving us individual practice training, which sounds great. Tell me more.
So yeah, there's no additional cost to having version 6. It is all included in the price that you already pay for your FootFall site. And with the training, so as we know, it is a different way of working. So what you are currently working with in the dashboard, it looks different. It may work different. We've got a few extra features. So you also will be offered training before you upgrade, and there will be videos as well to support this in case any of your staff can't make it. So that's just something that you would book via your editor before you go live with your version 6.
Excellent, thank you.
Nikita, sorry, we do have a SystmOne overview video already. There's been some additional features added since we've done the video, so I'm planning to get that sorted by next Wednesday. So as soon as that's available, we'll get that over to you next week as well, so you can have that.
Thank you.
I can see we have a question from Dawn.
It's only because we're on version 4 at the moment. So we didn't go to version 5 because we're waiting for version 6. So the integration part of it, I suppose, as a practice, we don't assign the dashboard. So it's all done by admin, and the ask your doctor and ask your nurse at present all comes through SystmOne. So it comes through the SystmOne messaging service, because the doctors and nurses like to actually reply through SystmOne direct. So the feature of integration is great, but my understanding is that you still have to reply through the dashboard and then integrate it. It's not like, so with my doctors and nurses, for example, they would, if they wanted to reply to the patient, they would have to have the dashboard. And then they would have to integrate it at the end of the conversation.
Yeah, so that is the way that the integration is intended to be used. So basically your episode of care will be dealt with within the dashboard and then exported to SystmOne once the conversation has finished. As Holly mentioned, she showed kind of like a snippet of a toolbar that we are working on. This will allow you to have just SystmOne open and send a message directly to the patient through the toolbar, so they don't need the dashboard open. But if they were to reply, they would have to see it through the dashboard, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. And with the training, is that all done virtually?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have any other questions? We'll stick around for a couple more minutes in case anybody does.
Okay. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, you go, Dawn.
Sorry, I've just got one. It's probably not on this part, but can patients send attachments and we send attachments to patients?
Yeah,
Yes,
so
so
that is
that's
something that is available. Yeah,
because that's something that is not, we can't do at present. So thank you.
I'd like to ask about the reporting features, if possible. Have they been improved at all?
Yeah, let me show you quickly, Zoe, because I didn't show you that in the demo. So if I go onto the menu here, if I look down under reports, there's loads and loads of in-depth reports on version 6 now. So you've got current status of the dashboard in real time, you've got request analysis, form activity. So this shows you the kind of outcome or who submitted the query. So the source of the query, basically, if it was a patient directly, if it was a proxy or a staff member through patient forms. You've got, again, the request source in a different format. You've got outcome analysis. So what the recorded outcome of each request is when it's been closed. You've got assigned combinations, stats for the videos, breach analysis. So you can see comparison, you can see how many requests have been breached in comparison to how many have been closed on time based on your KPIs. And you've also got age analysis and patient survey. So it contains the same things as the current dashboard stats, as well as lots and lots of additional ones as well.
Can you break that down by day?
I believe you can, yes. So if you look at request analysis, you can do it for custom period, and you can isolate a day. So you can put in like from yesterday to today, for example. So you can do it either by the suggested ones here for like 2 weeks, but then you do custom and it will show you the days specifically.
And can you break that down by staff as well, like who closes the forms or not?
Yeah, so if you go to outcome analysis,
yeah,
you can see here it's got the user and the outcome that they choose. So it will record each user's most used outcomes.
Fab, thank you.
No problem.
I think that pretty much wraps up today's session. So if anybody does have any questions, we will stick around for a couple more minutes. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us and spend some time with us today. And we hope you're as excited about the version 6 dashboard as we are. And it's lovely to see some familiar faces and hear your guys' opinions and your questions. And we hope to speak to you again soon.